I just realized, when did zombie games become the outside part of an inside joke, where gamers look at a zombie game and somehow the games themselves have turned into zombies, an endless crawling same-ass kind of enemy that's defeated by time and smarts or just running away and doing something else? You wouldn't have been remiss if you hadn't played Days Gone on its original PS4 debut. Critically, that was a wayward title, a game that had trouble delivering its story due to a presentation fractured right down the center between a do-everything, pretty good design style on one side and a bevy of technical issues around every bend. A third-person open-world zombie-slaying game, Days Gone, comes out very soon here on the PC. Thanks to Sony for the code. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. Graphics are up first. Let's just get this out of the way. Days Gone takes a substantial leap forward on the PC in some areas, even if it's just the 60 FPS or higher frame rate. Although that's not something that is unexpected. They've also pushed out the draw distance and foliage. You have an FOV slider and various settings, which helps the game actually deliver what is probably what the developer's original idea was in the first place. Though it is going to be important to remember that a PS5 patch has come out for this if you decide to go for that. Now, slipping and sliding across the back-end roads of Bend, Oregon on a Harley probably sounds like trying to skate using two cooked turkeys. It is true. Dynamic weather adjusts the graphics as well as the feel of the roads themselves. It can turn a back road that from a safe, normal descent into a local community into the world's loneliest game of bumper cars if you try to push it too far. And that's one of the things that Days Gone always had, at least in my opinion, as a positive, which is the animation, the feel of the motorbike, and the feel of the character on it. And that exploration when you're in the back end of some local valley and you're just driving through it, and how good that feels. And if you've only played the PS4 version, I cannot deny that 60 FPS or above elevates that control, that exploration, and just everything in the game to a whole other level. Crashes or oddities that would have happened in the original game are really a thing of the past here. Everything from the missions, the hunting the enemies down on motorbikes, to just racing across the desert to save a friend. They're all very much perfectly tactile now with a complete control of the bike. This also aids in combat, whether keyboard and mouse or gamepad. That additional control is priceless for a better experience. And while Bend isn't the most robust of dynamic locations, it's still really well done with Deacon terracing through deserts and forests, across bridges near huge lakes, and even in some locations fighting through the snowy mountains of the Eastern Cascades. And when it comes to battle, you got the freakers themselves. They're fairly bog standard when it comes to their design. There's a couple different types that you'll take on. Some are running all fours, using gas stations like monkey bars, and others just gathering together into the largest group possible and trying to kill you under their weight. They're still fairly good looking, and especially when you get 200 of them on screen chasing you, that's a phenomenal moment. Now, when the game is at its best, it's when it's all coming together like that, like sneaking into an enemy encampment when there's a storm. You see that wind whipping up the trees, you fit that barb into the crossbow and you shoot that dude in the back of the head, and then he unfortunately rolls off and alerts the entire group. But whatever, it's still cool looking. The weather effects, that dynamic feel to everything really do add to the game's overall mood. Sadly, what doesn't add to the mood is the performance issues. I feel like we are absolutely in deja vu land here. Jumping into this, yes, you can set this above the PS5 boost level, but I noticed stuttering even on a current i7 at 4.6 and a 2080 Ti with 32 gigs. 60 FPS at 4K is playable most of the time, but there was some stutter here as well, even if the settings were moved around between medium, very high, and high. No one's going to be able to claim this game is currently well optimized. It can run good for a good deal at a time, then just bottom out, or right out of the gate, you turn it on and you're getting fluctuations instantly. Render scale settings will let you get some FPS back if you are having issues, like I said. Now, there's HDR support. It's present. It's got 3 settings for you to dial in the proper settings for you. There's 2 noticeable issues that I did see crop up. The game had a number of frame time spikes, as well as some issues with CPU and GPU usage being stunningly high, even in the idle screens, even at just various different times when almost nothing was going on screen. And unfortunately, that's probably going to end up causing an issue with compatibility across multiple PCs. Also, the game does have some oddities with Vsync and its game options. I could never get the Vsync in the game to actually do anything. Only NVIDIA's panel for Vsync actually did something. Overall, yes, you have less bugs that happen on the PS4 title. They barely ever occur here, and yet at the same time, you're having optimization issues. The PC in places is above the PS4 and PS5, but that huge GPU and CPU usage, regardless of the settings, is not going to do any favors to this. Now, that being said, while it doesn't have the brute force in your face overall magic feeling of, let's say, Horizon Zero Dawn, nor the incredible image quality of Death Stranding, there's something about this when you're sitting on a cliff looking out over a small town you have to clear out. There's an incredible, impressive feeling to everything, that barrenness that sort of seeps in. Also, seeing an entire horde moving through the wilderness with a fondness for food of the human type never ceases to give you that oh shit moment of pause. And that brings us to gameplay and a bit about the story. So 2 years ago in the game, the world fell. Mankind woke up to this disease that caused humans to want a little taste of home by eating their own family. Mankind fell, and the two ex-bikers, who are part of the now-deceased mongrel MC, cruise the deserts and forests of Bend, Oregon. They're foraging for goods and pretending they're too close for comfort. Love affairs with their motorbikes wouldn't be a cause of concern if people weren't just gnawing on each other all the time. Now, this is set out as a third-person open-world game. Days Gone is going to have you traversing on foot and on two-wheeled thunder sled between communities that have all clawed their way to some kind of middle ground between safety and just really difficult to get to buffet for the bad guys. Unlocking the stories of the past through flashbacks and going through the deserted and sometimes not so deserted bases of Narrow, who is this game's version of FEMA, is going to take you about 30 plus hours. Those hours start with you as Deacon St. John, fallen member of the MC, with your friend Boozer, going about the game, learning some various things in small tutorials like how to stealth and writing and gameplay and interactions with the game world, both good and bad. But Deacon's as bland as hell. And I get it, creativity is not with all of us. You can get somebody who thinks they're creative, they'll jump into a character create screen, they get to the naming section and 2 hours pass and they still go with Commander fucking Shepard. And I get that, but Commander Shepard would still be less bland than Deacon. He's the toaster of characters. There's just no real growth or emotion here. And I'll describe why I think that is, but also why it doesn't work. And why it doesn't work, I think, can be solidified as one reason: Boozer and him together is awesome. In every set of triplets, at least 2 of them are unplanned, and yet somehow Deacon and Boozer would see the remaining kid and still be surprised at the audacity of a baby showing up. It's like one of them brings a match, the other brings the gas, and they just go skippity-doo-dah into a world made of dry paper. It is much better when they are together and starting out and trying to do different things and failing utterly. They're terrible. Luckily, the game itself still has a lot going for it. Regardless of that, it's just I would have loved to have seen them together more. You explore Bend, you take out enemies, you gather resources, you do jobs for various communities, all with at odds requirements and desires for their people. You save castaways floating on that sea of lack of resources out there in the wildlands, and you consistently level up Deacon and his motorbike, taking out freakers when you can and turning in their ears to get a bounty, which is as creepy as it sounds when you realize you're basically cutting off human ears and using them as giant IOU coupons. First, just like the original when it came to the PS4, I love riding the motorbike across Bend. The lack of the technical issues when it comes to streaming here pays off. Upgrading the bike brings true benefits, removing that basted turkey control of the original street bike into something that is imminently manageable. Or stealthing past a group of enemies and their sniper outpost by just idling down a hill, and that creak and metal fatigue sound of the springs on the back are the only proof you were there. And when the game goes loud, it's not that bad either. Controller or keyboard, regardless, Deacon can take out enemies with one of 2 primary weapons as well as an up-close weapon and a series of explosives. One huge bonus here is that the game handles the different weapons really well. And all of these weapons feel very unique. The smaller 22s to the huge shotgun blasts that have B actor levels of range but can clear out enemies up close easily. Also, while Deacon does have his trusty knife, it sucks down stamina like a friggin' drunk. So upgrade stamina. I'll get to those upgrades in a second. Or get a skill to repair items you find in the field. The knife is good, but goddamn, it takes forever to take down an enemy. It's like a kid whittling down a piece of wood to make a statue. Little bits of fiction. These are welcome as well. For example, there's a good amount of data on the freakers, and once you start destroying their hives, you can then gather parts of the debris and you can rub it onto a crossbow bolt and send normal humans into a frenzy. Yes, that's like smashing someone in the face with a stick covered in hepatitis and hoping the person instantly dies from liver disease, but still it works. It's explained in the fiction a bit, and that sells me. Also, the game changes things up with this dynamic weather I talked about, affecting not only you, the terrain, the traversal, but also the freakers. They get more powerful when the temperature drops. So during rains or snowing or at night, they're stronger. And I love this. It's slightly different from the normal zombie fare. And while it doesn't entice you to dive into the fiction and go looking for Days Gone novels, it does help tie the weather in a little bit more than just the terrain. Also, the game doesn't always differentiate friend from foe in the field. That can be a blast. You're going to go shooting down a road and see someone fighting rippers off. You go save them, and You find out they're marauders, those who haven't joined the communities, and sure, they'll let you help them, but then you're going to shoot you in the face for your trouble. They also set up a myriad number of traps in the world for ambushes. Now, upgrading Deacon as you go through the game world is done in 3 ways. The motorbike itself, and sure, it's not him, but it's your consistent ally even more than Boozer, with skins from other games, various designs, all manner of physical upgrades on it, and of course, extensions like the gas tank extension, which is a blast to have because this thing runs out of gas fast. It's like a character in other third-person games who can sprint for like 12 seconds before running out of stamina, like their lungs are just 2 giant inflatable donuts. An additional way of upgrading, though, is handled by taking out these narrow bases around the game world, where each has an injectable that lets you increase health and stamina or add more time to your focus ability, which lets you slow down time during the gunshots. These are vital for taking down hordes, so if you find those open, it's always worth taking it out. Lastly, when you perform quests, you're going to slowly unlock some more skill points in the various 3 tabs that correspond to the skills. You've got gathering, up close and distance weapons. Please, for the love of God, don't just jump in there and throw some skill points down. Instead, read them. They're hugely impactful, and it's one of the giant positives to Days Gone. It's a good thing that those kind of situations exist. Look into the skills. For example, you can get ones to collect more plants from harvesting, which literally changes everything about the way you heal, to herding, to hunting down enemies, to human interactions when you go and trade them into a camp and the stations there to get items from them. And speaking of those groups, while Deacon himself may not be the most exciting of mains, I actually like the interplay of the different factions and their own belief systems and thoughts. And saving someone and choosing where to send them is one step above what we may see in other open world games. So I'd end up saving somebody and then judge that person's reaction before I sent them to one of many likewise absolutely shit locations to live out their lives. Is it dire? Yes. Is it good times? Also, yes. Speaking of dire and good times, let's discuss the Hordes for a moment. Now, easily this was the defining bit of Days Gone, or it would have been had the game not had many tech issues. Imagine a massive number of these suckers all slumber partying the hell out of the daytime, only to wake up at night and party by killing every goddamn thing in sight. That's a horde. You need to be stocked up on pretty much everything to take them out. And, well, of course, you can use traps, larger weapons you find and unlock later on. Remember one thing, a horde situation can go from I got this to I got my ass handed to me in seconds. They're worth taking out because when you do, and of course when you take out the normal enemies and their infestations as well, you can then fast travel and open up those locations. It just also makes everything safer. Now, as I've described harvesting and doing quests for people and going around the game world and clearing out infestations, you're probably thinking, man, this sounds like every other open world third-person game. It is. And so are they all. It's not like any of them have really changed the genre. It's their cornerstone and how they deliver that cornerstone that lets them excel in their space. The problem with Days Gone is it almost seemed like it wanted to do everything pretty good and it didn't excel at any one thing. It did try to push the horde dynamic, but that never really caught on as anything other than, well, just more zombies than usual. If you consider every third-person open-world game as some kind of camera and the characters their lenses, it is true that Deacon is more of the general-style lens. You can feel that one particular enticing aspect a little bit missing. Sure, it allows for you to do all the stuff open-world games allow for you to do, and it's bookended by narrative that can be interesting. In a way, it's got a bit of a Mafia 3 kind of syndrome going on. There's something always just a little bit missing. And that brings us to sound, music, and voice. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is music. I love the music in Days Gone. I've seen people say they wanted a harder rock and roll style. Not to me. The musical interludes that play, especially later on, are the greatest part of this game. Bit more like a John Carpenter movie than, say, The Purge. It adds to the ambiance, and it also keeps the game from elevating into something that's a little bit more playful, which actually might end up causing a problem for people. I admit it could be seen as a weakness. Scenes and voice work all add to the weight of a game, and this game can feel truly dark at all points. And many times that somber feel is delivered to us via the characters, so let's talk about voice. Say what you want about Days Gone. I've said my fill at times. Voice work is not the issue here. Deacon is crazy as balls. He's cantankerous as fuck. He's a walking canker sore of a person. Even when someone helps him 2 seconds later, he's like, hey man, screw off. I like that. I would have loved to have had more time with Deacon and Boozer together. I've said that before. These are 2 dudes who play chess by melting the figures and assuming that because the plastic covers the board, they somehow won, slapping each other on the back. Deacon in particular is not anything other than a bad idea generator, known throughout the communities as someone who's good in a pinch and terrible in larger amounts. It's always hilarious to come in and have someone be like, Dude, what's up? As if the only way they could be less enthused is if you were on fire and fell into their gasoline stash. Then they change and go, hey man, I haven't seen that old sweet boozer in a long time. Tell him hi for me. The problem is the setting and scenes around those moments take away a bit of that edge that I would have liked to have seen. Deacon never becomes truly a bad kind of person, a violent kind of person, or a good kind of person. You never really get exactly one feel for him. It also works itself into the gameplay though. For example, there's an audible radar system that Deacon uses as he just murder chats his way throughout the entire game, especially when an enemy's near, sometimes when they're not near. I had one time where he was just bitching consistently about a camp nearby, and I found it like 500 yards and over the side of another mountain, but whatever. Sarah Boozer, Iron Mike, and later some of the crazy SOBs you meet are all handled very, very well. Excellent sound effects from the storm, the wind whipping through the trees to the rusty clang of the can traps going off as you trip over them. Audio effects mean descending into a cave turns that entire location into an echo chamber with every move you make, making more moves back at you. It can be truly disconcerting to dive into some locations here, or even sweep across the edge of a horde that you aren't ready to attack and hearing them sleeping fitfully in their caves, dreaming of human tasting candy canes. This all extends to some of the effects of the guns, the attacks, the explosions, as well as the motorbike itself, hushing down to this irregular thumping, chortling sound when you idle down a hill, and then roars back to life when you gun it to escape a sniper's bullet. And the occasional PS4 audio issues are gone here. How does all this come together for fun factor? Days Gone on the PC is a far better presented game than the original, that's for sure. When it comes up against the PS5 boosted version, not so much. You can actually experience it here the way it was probably intended because it doesn't nuke itself like a self-destructing ransomware program sitting and celebrating it broke into your free time. Sadly, it has its own issues. Not nearly as bad as the original, but the GPU usage stuff, the oddities, and the frame rate pacing and FPS is going to make you jump through some hoops to get this and actually enjoy it. Once you get it dialed in, if you can, then the entire way you enjoy this game is going to be contingent on what you're looking for thematically. If you're looking for a game that treats the aftermath of a zombie world ending that's sort of happy-go-lucky, look elsewhere. This is far closer to The Last of Us than it is most other open world games. It also doesn't match their cinematic chops, but it does offer something different, at least when it comes down to it, where you sort of get to see the normal person grind. Whether that's for you or not, I don't know. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system. Rent is replaced by deep, deep sale on PC titles, if that's a score I give it. And I'm going to give it a wait for a sale. Here's why. The first things first, time and again we see a discussion, is the zombie genre dead? It's repeated ground for sure, but missionary sex has been around for hundreds of thousands of years probably, and I still pretty much think it's sweet when it's done well. The issue with Days Gone is it stumbles. The dry presentation, the havoc-minded Deacon homicide humming his way across that desert bleakness doesn't always work for people, but when you combine it with optimization that is all over the place, it doesn't feel like that bloody biker's rag of a technical disaster that the PS4 version was, but it is wobbly for sure. And I think it needs a couple patches before I can say, hey, go out and get it, or a slight drop in price. Anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't give it a thumbs up, I would love for you to come to Patreon. You guys will see me doing the Mass Effect Patreon-only video up next. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be talking about 1, 2, and 3, everything that goes into the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. It's going to be incredible. If you get this game, I hope it runs well for you. I hope you enjoy it because that's, well, really what matters when it comes to gaming. Peace out.